Okay.
All right.
Thank
And
you.
we have about, no, sure, no problem. We got about 30 seconds to list off everybody.
Hello?
I'm going to go back and put it high. We have a new person on the call. We're getting a fairly large number of folks on the call. This is Liz Warren, your call coordinator. Now, we're putting calls to you in mode. Hi, we can hear you, and whoever's saying hello, welcome to the call. We're this in the informal part right now. Where are you calling from?
Arlington, Washington State.
Oh, well, welcome. What's your first name?
Ivy, I-V-Y.
Hi, Ivy. Welcome, Ivy. We're glad to have you with us. We're getting just about ready to start. What's going to happen is I'm going to go into Q&A mode in just a second. And I'm going to do that right now.
Q&A session started.
Okay, so for Ivy and everyone else joining us today, what I just did, this is Liz Warren, your call coordinator. I put us all into Q&A mode so that the guest speakers are unmuted, but everyone else is unmuted so that we can all sort of hear what they're saying. During the call, there will be a number of times when we invite folks to ask questions, so you will have a chance to speak. We also have, if you're in the video conference room, an online chat feature that's down in the lower left corner, so you can type a question. We have a couple folks monitoring that. Lisa Oldendorf and Mark Cohen. I'm going to introduce them in just a few minutes. But if you have a question or a problem, you can type it in. And Lisa and Mara and Tom Hawking, if you can answer some of the folks I think might be having some sound problems, if you can talk them through their audio issues, that would be helpful. I'm going to go ahead and start our call recording now.
This conference is being recorded.
Good afternoon and evening, everyone, and welcome to the National TPP Team Conference call, Deconstructing the Corporate Case for Fast Track Trade Authority. We have with us tonight our special guest, Dave Johnson, with Campaign for America's Future. If you are in the online meeting room, feel free to type notes into the chat box at any time. I'm going to introduce you to the call host team and tell you a little bit about how the call works for those of you who may be new to us. Again, my name is Elizabeth Warren, not Senator. I'm the National TPP Team Coordinator. I'm a MoveOn organizer in Southern California. If you have any questions, you can email me. My email is on the screen right now. It's liz.moveon@earthlink.net. If you signed up for the call, you will be getting a post-call report that has all the contact information for all of the speakers on the call, so you don't have to worry about that. Just a little bit about how it works. Again, everyone is on mute right now. And we are recording the call so that folks who aren't able to join us can still listen and hear all the wonderful things our guest speakers have to say. We have a couple of places where we share information. One of them is the Global TPP Team Facebook page. The link to that is on my slide, and we'll also be sharing that with you after the call. You can find copies of the PowerPoint, the meeting report, some additional tools and downloads, and for this call and all of our previous calls, which we've been having calls since 2013. So if you want some background and information on previous topics, you can go and look for it there. It's a good resource. Our TPP call host team consists of a number of wonderful volunteers. Tom Hawking manages the Global TPP Team Facebook page. He's also our resident technical expert. Tom can be reached at the twhawking@gmail.com address. He's a MoveOn regional organizer in Pennsylvania. Tom, would you like to say hello? If you muted yourself, Tom, unmute so you can say hi.
I'm unmuted now. Hello, everyone.
There you are. Great stuff. Anything you want to share with the group?
No, just I'm glad to be here and glad things are coming along.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Next is Lisa Oldendorf. Lisa shares duties with Mara, managing chat notes and collecting all the information and the links that people share there, and gives wonderful advice. If you have a question or a problem, you can type a note to Lisa in the chat box. Lisa is a MoveOn regional organizer in New York, and her email is on the screen if you have questions, maybe even about what's happening in New York. Lisa is your person. Lisa?
Hi, everyone. We had a wonderful TPP protest in New York on a blizzardy day on January 26th. Welcome, and let's hope that we can beat this fast track.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Next is Liz Amston, my partner in crime, who's been organizing on this issue with me since the beginning. She is a MoveOn organizer also in Southern California. She also helps put together the call notes and reports and doesn't miss anything. So if you want to make sure that you're getting the correct information, everything that's said on the call, and an update on historically what's been happening with TPP, Liz is your person. I'm going to invite her to say hi and share whatever she wants to about what's happening in California. Liz?
Hi, I'm really excited. We've got a good group working in Los Angeles now to fight fast track. We've got a meeting on Tuesday hoping to move forward. We're waiting to see what the actual wording of the Trade Promotion Authority, aka fast track, comes out, because that will sort of dictate how we approach it and attack it. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from Dave Johnson on various points to address from the other side. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Jen Schwarzengruber is busy running another event today. Actually, she is a very dedicated organizer in Kansas on Medicaid expansion and a number of other issues, so she can't be with us tonight. But when she is with us, she also helps put together our call report. So I'm going to thank her in absentia and move on. Next is Harriet Haywood. Harriet is a tireless organizer in Florida and one of the critical members of our call planning team. Harriet has been working to get us call speakers, coordinating topics and themes for future calls, and also interfacing with some of our allies to do plans for actions as well as calls and topics. Harriet?
Thanks, Liz, and let me tell you, I'm nothing compared to what you do, and I thank you so much for everything and all the others on this team. You all are really great. Down in Florida right now, we're working with the Citizens Trade Campaign delegate, Deborah Dion, and our labor partners, and we now have a calling program that where we're going to be calling probably as of tomorrow into super voters, like in District 14 and other critical districts where some of our representatives are wobbly. So, and we're trying to set up some meetings during the President's Day week, and we're still waiting to hear about the labor meeting we're hoping to get in Tampa. And that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Harriet. Next, I'd like to introduce Mara Cohen, who is part of our National Team Core Group. Mara is also part of our planning team and has been instrumental in getting us some wonderful speakers, including Naomi Klein, who was with us a couple of phone calls ago. She's a member of PDA's Mass Criminalization Issue Team and also an organizer in Illinois for Global Climate Convergence. She, in addition to Lisa, manages the chat notes and answers questions. So if you have any questions, you can type a note to Mara or email her at mcmoveon@gmail.com. Mara?
Hi, some great lobbying and creative action activities coming up for President's Day Week of Action. One of them that's really colorful is that in Quigley's district, the Obama Democrat who will not cave on fast track and TPP is going to be that people are going to be handing out broken-hearted Valentines with candy and costumes on to show that Quigley has broken the hearts of his constituents by refusing to do right by them by pledging to stop fast track. And so that's fun. And the other thing is make sure you call in on the phone, not the computer. If you can't get audio, try calling in again. And those are my 2 cents. Thank you very much, and enjoy the call.
Thank you so much, Mara. Now I'd like to introduce our ally, Adam Weissman, with Trade Justice and Global Justice in Animals and the Environment. Many of you in the New York area know Adam very well for his work coordinating just about, I think, every action that happens in New York City. He is the guy on the ground, the person to talk to. He's been involved in this issue long before many of us, including me. He's going to tell us a little bit about what's been happening in New York, some of the plans that they have for recess action. Also, if you need information, Adam has a wealth of resources on his website, tradejustice.net, and I think also on a couple of other places. He's always adding new locations to Adam. If I forgot to include one, feel free to type it into the chat box. His email is adam@tradejustice.net. Adam? You have to unmute yourself, Adam. Okay, so he's still muted. I'm going to go ahead and manually unmute you, Adam. You have the floor. You should be unmuted right now.
Hello?
Good, Adam. There you
Hey,
go.
can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Just like
Great. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Liz. Yeah, a lot is happening in New York. So we did have a rally in the middle of a hailstorm and snow blizzard in New York on the first day of the New York round of TPP negotiations. We got feedback back that some of the negotiators watched the rally for a while, and some of them said they were emboldened on some of the issues by our being out there in the snow and hail. After being at the in front of the site of the negotiations, we marched to the office of Senator Schumer because this was one day before the Senate Finance hearing on Fast Track. And so in the midst of the hail, we rallied outside Schumer's office to let him know that he should stand strong on Fast Track and tell Ron Wyden that he should not join onto any new Fast Track being pushed by Orrin Hatch. And we were pleased that the next day Senator Schumer actually seemed to have some good things to say. So whether that was as a result of us standing out there in the hail or that was already the direction he was going, maybe, who knows, maybe a little of both, but it was nice to see. In coming up, we have a lot of things going on, both that we are planning and that others are planning in New York. Some things are not quite in stone yet, but so I'll just mention them quickly and let folks know to stay in touch with us so we can give some details on what's coming up. Some of our allies have big plans. The Communication Workers of America has a lot of things that they're planning, from a lobby meeting with the new Tea Party representative Zeldin on Long Island to an event with Elliot Engel and Nita Lowy in Westchester County, to a town hall meeting in Joseph Crowley's district, a Ways and Means member, very high-ranking congressional Democrat and not a friend of ours, mostly, who is in, and so they'll be doing events in Queens and the Bronx in his district on February 25th in, I believe, not sure if that's the final date, attempted date in Queens, and then in March in the Bronx. Sierra Club and Food and Water Watch are working on a forum in Congressman Charlie Rangel's district. Details to be announced. So a lot is happening. There's also a door-to-door canvassing effort that CWA is going to be doing in Crowley's district, a press conference that's being planned with Congress members during the recess at City Hall, similar to the one that was held last year. Again, details TBA. Global Trade Watch is going to be doing a national teleconference on the potential New York job losses as a result of TPP. So there's lots going on. Some of the other things coming up, some of our folks are going to be organizing lobby visits with Congressman Crowley, Congressman Meng, with Donald Norcross in New Jersey, I believe also with Carolyn Maloney, and with we're still working on Congressman Rangel. We are holding firm on getting a meeting with him and not just with staff. So if any of you live in any of those districts and would like to be part of those meetings, please email me at adam@tradejustice.net. We're also working on a meeting. Meeting with Congressman Zeldin, particularly trying to work with some of the conservative groups in his district and trying to reach them to see if they would be willing to talk to him on this issue. And I've made some headway in that regard. It's still a work in progress. Some events coming up. I'll try to keep this quick because I know we're running short on time. Any of you who are in Congresswoman Clark's district, Yvette Clark, should be pleased to know that she just put out a very strong letter expressing her opposition to Fast Track and saying outright that Fast Track is simply turns Congress into a rubber stamp for bad trade deals. It is great to see her using such strong language. Some of our constituents in her district are going to be having a meeting to plan where they can go from here and take advantage of Congresswoman Clark's strong position to build on this issue. So if any of you are in her district, there'll be a meeting on the 12th. That's at 518 12th Street, apartment 1L in Brooklyn. I'll post that in the chat box for people who missed that. Our new friends at the ongoing friends at the newly formed International Trade Education Squad of the Park Slope Food Co-op, I think the nation's largest food co-op, is going to be holding a forum on February 20th. It's their first official forum at 6 p.m. on TPP's impact on the environment. I'll be speaking at that event. That's at 782 Union Street in Brooklyn. And again, I'll post that in the chat box. There's supposed to be tonight actually, but it sounds like it was preempted, a radio show that's going to be coming up in Spanish on TPP with guests looking at both TPP's impact on Latin America and TPP's impact on business here in the U.S., small business here in the U.S. It's a program called La Voz Latina. And as soon as we find out the rescheduled date, we'll share that information. So lots of other things going on, probably too much to mention on the call, but I'll probably post some more details in the chat box, and it's probably way more than anyone can really absorb all at once. But lots happening, and hopefully we can use all this energy to really push back hard and let our New York legislators and New Jersey legislators know that fast track is not the way forward, and that we demand that they oppose it, and we'll hold them accountable if they don't.
Thank you so much, Adam, and that was amazing. And just to let everyone know, we do have excellent note takers. Liz Anson especially doesn't miss anything, and we do record the call, so we'll be transcribing some of this. So you will get information on all of these calls and actions that Adam just mentioned. If you do have questions, again, you can email him at adam@tradejustice.net. For those of you not in the meeting room, it's ADAM@TRADEJUSTICE.net, and Adam can answer those questions. Thanks again, Adam.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I'd like to introduce Beth Allen, our ally at Communications Workers of America. Beth's going to talk a little bit about what CWA is doing. You got a little teaser from Adam. There's also a fabulous new petition up. The links to that is down below on her slide. And anyone who's not in the meeting room, just let me know. But we will be sharing that link to that petition with you in the post-call packet as well. Beth, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Liz. Can everyone hear me?
I think we can hear you, yeah.
Excellent. Just want to make sure of that. I'm glad to be on the call tonight. And first, I wanted to thank everyone here, particularly the people involved in putting together and hosting this call week after week, but also folks attending it. We've been at this for a couple of years now. I know many of you have been doing this for as long as we've known about the TPP negotiations, and it's that work that has gotten us this far because we keep winning. We keep preventing fast track from getting introduced, and we keep preventing them from making significant progress toward getting a deal on the TPP. And this is a critical time, as I know most of you know. This is the time when the Obama administration has made alliances with the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate, determined to get a fast-track bill, determined to do it whether they have a significant number of Democratic votes on the bill or not, which is sort of extraordinary from a Democratic administration, but they're very serious about that. They're not giving up. The Chamber of Commerce is not giving up. The Business Roundtable is not giving up. But we're not giving up. And, it's been terrific so far in 2015. We've been able to keep them slowed down on the introduction of the bill, and that's really what we're about. Still, the strategy here, just sort of in the 20,000, 40,000 foot view of it, is to keep the pressure on key figures in the Senate, like Ron Wyden, to keep him nervous about the bill, and then to go really hard in the House, target by target, representative by representative, because when it comes down to it, and when this bill finally does get introduced and voted on, it's really going to be down to one or two votes in the House, we think. And so every single one of those votes counts, both the most conservative, and the most liberal. So running the gamut. And we're very pleased. One thing that was a real sign for the work people have put in on this is that the vast majority of the Democratic freshmen signed a letter or sent their own letters stating that they opposed fast track, and some of them very strongly. And so that was a terrific way to start off the year. As Liz said, we have a petition up on the Move On petition poll that you all don't have your own petitions that we were working, we welcome you to send folks there so they can state their opposition to the bill, the future bill, and also that get in the stream for updates and information about how they can continue to deepen their involvement. We have a call-in number that I'll share with folks to send out to everyone after the call that CWA has set up that anyone can use if they wish. Again, no one should feel obligated to use this particular number, but it's available, an 800 number that asks for people's zips and directs them to their representatives to make calls, and folks should feel free to use that if they're out there in the field doing work. Lots going on during President's Day week. I won't go over a comprehensive list of it now, but both CWA and our many allies in this fight have plans across the country in many districts to attend town halls, to go on lobby visits, to really use the President's Day week to continue to make our position clear, to shore up some shaky folks, because we expect that shortly after President's Day, they will introduce a fast-track bill in the Senate. Now, that's not a sure thing. I think that the proponents of the bill are still sort of figuring out what they want to do and how they're going to work this, but at least what folks like Hatch have been saying publicly indicates that shortly after the President's Day recess, they do plan to put a bill forward, and we want to be ready. And so we're going to be working over the course of the next week to get folks organized, to do rapid response as soon as that bill is introduced, and to do massive calls and emails on the first few days after introduction, again, to make the opposition crystal clear and to keep folks who have stated their opposition in the past, make sure that their opposition remains strong, or as strong as it can be, and that they don't look for loopholes in the actual legislation in order to change their tune. The people pushing this bill definitely want a divide and conquer strategy. They want to try to put a few things in the legislation that will peel off one or another of the constituencies who are opposing it, and everyone's standing very strong, and we need to reiterate the message that we are strong and we are holding together. A couple other things I just wanted to mention real quickly is that the VA does have a series of radio ads that are running around the country in targeted districts, and we will have a page that I can share with the audio from those, the 30-second long ads. Sometimes they show up as content on news stations. Sometimes they show up as standalone ads, but with a variety of different folks like Reverend Barber, who is airing in various locations in North Carolina, folks like Sister Simone, who is doing it in English and in Spanish, that were running in the southwestern states, different ads like that. We have one from a conservative small business owner that we're running in more conservative districts, so that's another program that we've got out there. And then lastly, we have a series of fact sheets, ever-growing, a number of fact sheets on different topics about how TPP will affect all kinds of different folks and the negative impacts it'll have from the environment to labor, to seniors, to folks with HIV, all kinds of different issue topics, on a dozen of those. And again, I'll share that link out with folks. So if anyone wants to make use of any of that material, they should feel free. Any material that's out there from CWA, everyone should feel free to use and adopt for whatever purposes in order to stop this, because we're putting it out there. No pride of ownership. We just want to get this job done. So thank you all very much.
Hey, thanks, Beth. And somebody is typing a note. Just to let everyone know, yes, I cyberstalked Beth and found this great photo of her online. I think she was visiting Denali. And someone wants to know what that little emblem is on your jacket. So I'll show that. That's the HRC equality logo on my jacket. That was a while ago in Alaska. My son was 5 and he's 13 now, so that was a while ago. And so, yeah, that's from a
a youth training we ran. So that's what that jacket was from all those years ago. I used to work at HRC stuff.
Okay, thanks. Beth. We got a little off topic, but hey, we attend that today. Thank you so much, Beth. And yes, we will share all of the information that you're going to send us with everybody in the post-call packet so that they can take appropriate action. So thanks again for sharing with us.
Sure.
And don't forget to sign the petition, everybody. Through the link. It's over 17,000 signatures last time I checked, so it's really gathering. I've had a good head of steam. Now I would like to introduce Celeste Drake, one of Beth's colleagues with the AFL-CIO. Celeste is the Trade and Globalization Policy Specialist, and those of you who've been with us on previous calls recognize her. She's going to tell us a little bit about what's happening in Washington and what the plans are for the presidency recess actions. I also have Celeste to thank for recruiting today's special guest speaker, Dave Johnson. So thank you so much, Celeste. And by the way, everybody, Celeste is also a expert tweeter. She's got a wonderful online social media presence. So follow her at cdrakefairtrade. And if you have a question, you can email her at cdrake@aflcio.org. And I also put a link to President Trump's op-ed. So, Celeste, you have the floor.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, thanks for linking to that op-ed. I think it was a letter that President Trump penned in response to a piece about how great TPP and Fast Track are going to be in helping the economic recovery, and we're trying to be as responsive as we can in being all over that. And frankly, everybody else on the phone can help. Every time that you see either in your local newspaper or in any of the newspapers that you read online, like if you have a Google News alert set or if you just have a habit of reading the LA Times or the Chicago Tribune or whatever it is, shoot off a quick, short reply when they keep saying the TPP is going to be great. And you don't have to hit every reason why it's not, or same with Fast Track, you don't have to say every single reason under the sun about why Fast Track is a problem. But something short, and if enough of us do it, they will begin to be printed. And, to the extent that folks are reading them, they will get a different voice that they wouldn't otherwise hear. So I think Beth covered a lot about what's happening during the President's Day recess, so I won't copy that or repeat that at all. What I will say is if you're in a district, it doesn't matter if you're in a Republican district or Democratic district, find out who your representative is, find out where they are, if they're with us or they're mostly with us, and you just want to ensure that, please send them a thank you letter. Say, this is important to me, and I vote on this basis, and I want to thank you for what you've done so far to stand up for, and then insert the reason that's important to you. It's the environment, it's wages, it's jobs, it's clean food, it's human rights, it's whatever is important to you. And just saying thank you and reassuring them that voters are behind them and that you want to give them the strength to maintain that backbone, that's really, really important. And if your person's position is unknown or anti to us and you don't know what to do and what's going on, find out where your local Central Labor Council is and see if you can give them a call, even if you're not associated with the union at all. Say, hey, I'm a local anti-fast track activist. I'm trying to find out if you all have a rally, a protest, a meeting scheduled, something on Fast Track that I can join in, that my group can join in, that we can help participate in. And so find something that's going on and find some way to meet someone that's working on the same issue as you that perhaps you haven't met, and go and do something together and show that we're allied on this movement, and get yourself out there and hopefully make some connections that will continue after this particular President's Day recess. And that's really what we want to be doing, is we want to be making this visible. We want to be making sure that local press and bloggers pick up on this, and why are so many meetings going on and rallies and protests, and why are the family farmers lining up in conjunction with the internet activists, lining up in conjunction with the, local foods crowd and the animal rights folks and the labor unions, and get that news out there. At this point, we are continue to be told that the fast-track bills will be introduced immediately after the President's Day recess. So we have, one more week to prepare for President's Day recess and 2 more weeks to prepare for the bill introduction. As far as we know, Wyden and Hatch have not yet come to an agreement on what this bill would look like. It's a good thing because it means Wyden is holding out and looking for better, and it also means there could be a delay. So on 2 fronts, that fact that they haven't reached consensus yet is good. It's also why, again, I would say for folks when you're talking about smart tracks, quote unquote, don't be totally dismissive because, right, we don't know what smart track is or is going to be at this point, and it might be really useful for some members to say, well, I'm holding out for smart track, and then to be able to say, whatever Hatch just introduced isn't smart track, and that's why I'm not for it. So let's sort of give them a little space, so they know that clearly we're not going to let them off the hook. But if they want to somehow be using that in a way that we push them into using that, well, you better make sure it is smart. So we'll see what happens there. Again, if we can get them to delay introduction, that's better for us. And we really need to do our best to be reaching out to the Republican side, folks who follow the news. You've seen there is something going on, right, amongst the Tea Partiers themselves about fast track, but we don't know really the strength of that movement. And the vast bulk of Tea Party financial resources come from folks like the Koch brothers that are for fast track. So we cannot simply throw up our hands and leave the Republicans to themselves. So again, reach out to Republicans if that's who is your elected official. And as we discussed last time, the best way to talk to Republicans isn't really sort of the meat of the underlying trade agreement. It's not really the meat of the TPP per se, but it is very much the constitutional issues, the blank check to the administration, the sort of overreach where anything can be negotiated and brought back, and Congress has very little say, where you're appealing to the prerogative of the member and say, do you really want to hand over your power to the president? That those are the kind of things that you want to say to appeal to Republicans. Of course, they care about jobs and these things too, but so many of them will say, I'm totally for the TPP, it's just the process that I hate. And so we don't want to get into a fight with them about whether TPP is going to help or harm jobs. We know what we think. We don't think it's going to help jobs at all, but let's not fight with them about that. Let's talk to them about what we agree with, that the fast track process is a mess. So I think I'll stop there, and we'll get on to our main speaker.
Okay. Well, quick question. Well, do you have time to answer a couple of questions if anyone has any for you before we move on?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Unless you would rather wait and maybe take the questions with Dave at the end.
However, you're hosting, so however you want to do it is okay with me.
Okay, why don't we say we've got time for maybe 2 quick questions, very quick questions, everybody. If someone would like to just clarify something that Celeste Drake shared just now, press *6 on your phone, and you can ask her a quick question. And with luck, we'll hit on anything that might be concerning anybody. So *6 on your phone, ask a question. We'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 very quick questions. All right, we have someone at 616. If you could let us know who you are, where you are, and just real quickly what your question is. Go ahead. area code 616-780.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. And who are you? Where
Yes.
are you? And what is it?
I'm Charles Towns. I'm stationed at Fort Gordon, Georgia. I lived in Michigan until NAFTA sent all the factory jobs to Mexico. I would like to ask Ms. Drake, I think a lot of the Tea Party is actually on board with opposing fast track and the present version of free trade. What makes you think that the Tea Partiers really aren't strong against it?
Well, it's not, I wouldn't say the individual Tea Partiers, frankly, right? Like, I don't know all the Tea Partiers, and it's a very amorphous group. A lot of folks have tight-knit local Tea Party groups, which I don't know, you may or may not be a part of, but I've seen lists that's on the anti-fast track stuff. Lots of individual Tea Party groups from Florida are on. But if you look at sort of some of the bigger national Tea Party groups, like Freedom Works, and yes, some of the ones that are funded by the Koch brothers, and no, that doesn't mean every local Tea Party group gets money from the Koch brothers. They are not speaking up, these big national groups that have the big business money behind them, because it's the same interests that want the free trade agreements, want to that have the corporations write their own rules, do all of that. So what we see here in Washington, D.C. is there was a great press conference first week of January or second week of January with about kind of 6 right-of-the-aisle groups said we're against fast track and we're going to be fighting it. But in terms of where there's a lot of money on the Tea Party side, those groups aren't bringing in activists to have congressional meetings on the Hill and aren't devoting that kind of money. So the Tea Party folks that are here are largely self-funded or funded by much smaller, more local grassroots type organizations. And it would be great if some of these big national, half the big bucks organizations would start fighting. But until they do, we have to realize, like, every voice matters. And so every voter, whether they identify themselves as a Tea Party or not, should call his or her elected official, even if they think, well, Republicans don't normally listen to me because I'm a trade unionist, for example. It doesn't matter. You call up, you say, I'm in your district, I'm a voter, this is what I care about, and you try and link it to what that member cares about. And so that's what we all need to keep doing. I think folks tend to usually reach out to those they think will agree with them. And we don't have that kind of luxury here. We have to reach out to everybody.
Thanks, Celeste. We've got I think time for maybe one more question, and if your host can jump in here too. I think what Celeste said is absolutely right. It's important for us to recognize that we don't have to agree on everything in order to agree on this issue. We have a lot of overlap with people that we might not be in line with on every other issue, but it's really, really important for the United States, economic well-being, our jobs, our sovereignty, our planet, everything that we're trying to protect here, food, water, you name it, that we join with anybody who has a reason to oppose fast track and just get together on this. So thanks so much for that, everybody. We have Scott Taylor now on the line. Scott, if you could let us know who you are, where you are, and what your question is for Celeste, and then we will move on.
My name is Scott Taylor. I currently reside in Anna, Texas. It's north of Dallas. And my question is, does she have a sense of, where our representatives stand in Texas, like state and the local, the state level, and where they stand on this fast track deal?
Well, who's your representative?
All right, I have to go back to him for just a second. Okay. Go ahead, Scott. You have the floor once more.
Yeah, I think it's Sam Johnson and John Cornyn.
John Cornyn is a very strong fast track supporter, unfortunately. Sam Johnson, I would have to look up. My inclination is that he's a fast track supporter, but I'm not totally sure of that. So let me look it up. They are all over the place. From Texas, you've got folks like Louis Gohmert from the right and Lloyd Doggett from the left, who are both fast track opponents. And again, it's not necessarily an easy thing to predict, because often, we found that some folks who have talked an awful lot about the importance of the Constitution and sovereignty then say, well, I'm such a big free trader that I have to be for fast track. And so it's our job as citizens to educate them on why that's not necessarily the case. And you have the largest small business organization is called NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. NFIB basically goes up on the Hill and lobbies the same way as the Business Roundtable, which is the group of the largest corporations in America. They often don't really do something different because they represent small businesses. But then you have a lot of small business groups, the Coalition for a Prosperous America, the Sustainable, something that's like Small Business Sustainable Group. It's like green businesses. They come in and they say anti-fast track. It's not good for small business. A lot of the things like I've been seeing in the comments, and that's absolutely true, but it's that more education needs to get out there. I was at a meeting of international trade activists last week, and a lot of folks were talking about just printing up flyers and going down the main streets in wherever they were from, town, village, city, and passing out to the small businesses. Have you heard about this? You should pay attention. Call your representative today, or put something up in the window of your shop. And just because your average small business owner probably has never even heard of fast track or the TPP. So to the extent that people are willing to invest that kind of time in educating small businesses, could be very useful. The word hasn't gotten out, and we need to do more to get the word out.
Thanks so much, Celeste. We only have one more hand up, so I'm going to ask if it's all right with you, Celeste. Let's take this caller, and then we'll clear the queue. It's someone in California at area code 650-595-5131. Let us know who you are and your question for Celeste. Go ahead. You have the floor, area code 650. They're being shy. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and clear the queue then. We will go to the next speaker. Thanks so much, Celeste, and maybe that person will raise their hand later.
Hello. Sorry.
Hello. I'm sorry. I think a person didn't raise his hand. Okay, go ahead.
This is 650-595-5131.
Okay. What is your name and what is
my name is Marshall Dinowitz. I'm in Belmont, California, and I'm a part of the Democracy for America progressive group here. And my question is that currently some of the environmental groups are starting to laud the TPP for some minor environmental protection in the TPP. And I don't like the World Wildlife Fund just put out a thing about how they're going to have increased oversight in the TPP for illegal poaching. So my question is, how are they getting some of this early TPP information, and what's being done to reach out and counteract this attempt to co-opt the environmental groups the way they did during NAFTA and other trade agreements?
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I would say a lot of this early information coming about why TPP would be good is most likely coming from the USTR itself. We found a couple of weeks ago, USTR, we believe, anyway, helped plant a story with Forbes about how transparent it was being. And they took a piece of testimony that I gave before Congress from almost 2 years ago to really a subcommittee of one of the House, so like really pure in the public domain, but you'd have to know to look for it. And nobody really knew. And I was basically, we were using what's called positive reinforcement, like say some positive things about the fact that USTR is willing to have meetings with us and answer our calls and is responsive to requests to meet. And then it was followed up with, but, you know, this isn't good enough. Just having access isn't the same as having influence. And, you know, we haven't seen any impact on the content of the agreement yet. So, da-da-da-da-da. Well, they selectively took the positive reinforcement stuff, put it in the sports thing, and then used it. And it seems really unlikely they would have been able to do that if USTR hadn't dug up the quote for them. So USTR, which is the one that is negotiating the environmental chapter and has been bragging since the beginning about how it's going to be historically strong and great and blah, 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 blah. They're the ones that know what they're working to put in it and what they've bragged about on their blog. So they probably went to, we were talking about an article today on NPR came out about, it's going to fight illegal wildlife trade. The way to counteract this is, for one thing, in my opinion, let's get the discussion off of either status quo or TPP, because that's a false dichotomy. There aren't only two choices. There are a number of choices about how to do international trade, about how to protect wildlife internationally, all of these things. And if this is really about protecting wildlife internationally, is the best way to do it a trade agreement? And if it is a trade agreement, is it the TPP as negotiated? And the answer is going to be, no, I don't think so. There's a million ways to do it. Plus, these promises seem, again, go back to NAFTA. They seem really overblown, and how can they tell us it's going to be true? NAFTA was going to have a really strong environmental portion. It was going to prevent the pollution on the U.S. border where the maquiladoras are. It was going to be so great. What we found is that that's not really the case. And if the U.S. wants to stop trafficking in illegally harvested wildlife or plants, they can do that right now. And what it would take is more money towards enforcement. And I haven't seen anything about the TPP giving more money towards enforcement. So try to expand the conversation about how many choices do we have? Is the TPP our only choice? And you know, why should we believe any claims about the TPP? And frankly, the Sierra Club has been doing a great job here in Washington, D.C. in terms of trying to take up the leadership amongst the environmental community. And they just did a letter last week or the week before that had, if I recall correctly, more than 40 environmental organizations signed on saying they were opposed to fast track. So they've really been doing a lot of work to try to prevent kind of what you're talking about has happened before with defections. And unfortunately, some groups will defect, you know, because of their funding base or whatever. You know, they maybe sort of try to be the face of the TPP is environmentally friendly. But I think you'll find that through leadership here of some of the organizations that have been involved in this since day one, you won't have too many. And you, again, as a member of some of these organizations, as an activist with links to these organizations, you should reach out yourself and say, we don't feel that the pro-environment position is to be for fast track in the TPP, and let them know and give your talking points and say your piece, because, you know, all organizations, to one extent or another, have to be responsive to their members, their funders, their donors, their activists. So be somebody who makes some noise.
Thanks, Celeste. All right, we have about 2 minutes to get through our next segment, but fortunately we have a really rapid-fire speaker here. I'm going to ask her to slow down. Emily Ann Slayton, Director of Social Media with TPP Media March. For those of you who know Emily Ann and those who don't, she's been coordinating the Twitter storms, first nationally and now globally since this whole fight began on the TPP Tuesdays. The hashtag Stop Fast Track ties in with our coalition, StopFastTrack.com, that was formed more than a year ago, January, and has tools for writing letters and also contacting your representatives by phone with a little helpful script. She posts her tweet at the location on the slide there that she will note, and her email, if you need to reach out to her, is eastlayden@mac.com. Do not fear, everybody. You will be getting a call, a reminder to the Twitter storm before Tuesday in the post-call information follow-up. Leanne.
Thank you. Please, next slide. So our meeting for this week, this is our invitation. Please join us on TPP Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for our Twitter storm. So you just go to the link on the bottom, tiny.cc/TPP Media March, and then copy and paste each tweet one by one into your Twitter feed, and that's called a Twitter storm. If you're new to joining us on TPP Tuesday, our official social media day of action. Also on Tuesdays, we are initiating a new thing where we call on our lunch hours to Congress, or whenever you're free during the day. Please give your House rep a call, email, set up a House visit. You can take different fact sheets with you from Expose the TPP website that has a lot of information. It's always a good place to go. It has all of the letters from members of Congress who are opposing the TPP, and a lot of information for you to take with you. So yeah, one more thing. This other hashtag, TPA for U.S. jobs, that is the official hashtag for propaganda from U.S. trade reps. So we are taking over that hashtag daily. Please join us in tweeting as much as you can. You can just follow me and retweet, or follow Expose the TPP, or HPCGTW, and just retweet their tweets for TPA for U.S. jobs. And we'll post the facts, not more U.S. trade rep lies. All right, thank you so much. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Emily Ann. And again, everyone, not to worry, you'll be getting a copy of this presentation and a reminder about the Twitter storm before Tuesday. And again, make sure that you do the phoning and also the contacting your reps via email or any other way that you can. So getting the word out. Now I'd like to introduce one of our key allies, National Call Planning Team ally Andrea Miller, Executive Director of a new nonprofit, People Demanding Action. Most of you know Andrea from her role as Co-Executive Director of Progressive Democrats of America. Now the new organization is working in organizing civic action groups, building grassroots alliances on the state, local, and national level. There's also, I think, being updated a fast track map. A lot of you asked about where your representatives stood on fast track, and I know that Andrea is in the process of updating that information as it becomes available with the new members of Congress. If you have a question, you can email her at andrea@cdamerica.org. And now she's going to tell you a little bit about other things that you can do and the fast track letter to the editor tool. Andrea? And I know she was on and off. I'm hoping she's still with us. And maybe she's muted. Andrea, are you muted? She may have ended up getting muted. My friend Andrea, are you with us? I'm looking for her in the call. We may have lost her. I know she was with us earlier, but I know she had some other things that she had commitments today. Well, if she comes back, we'll jump back into that information after our main speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead and say thank you, Andrea, for all your work. And when you come back on, we'll share that portion of the call information. Now I'd like to introduce Dave Johnson. We're so thrilled that he was able to join us today. Those of you who've been following, progressive blogging probably know Dave very well because he has essentially written for every major progressive media outlet known to man. You may have read his information on HuffPost, Alternet, Nation of Change, Common Dreams, Daily Cause, Critics and Liars, and Truth Out. Most recently, he published a piece on HuffPost that talks about basically how to dismantle this argument from the U.S. Trade Representative's office about why fast track is important and why we need it. Dave has got an interesting background. He helped to co-found Carbon Tracing, which is a startup that hoped to develop desktop systems to validate carbon trading in the U.S. He's done an awful lot of work sort of, behind the scenes and on computers, helping us move forward technologically. He used to design games for Atari and Magic, and was a pioneer in designing and developing productivity and educational applications for personal computers. He's worked as a CEO and VP of Sales and Marketing and has held a number of technical positions as well. So, Dave, we're thrilled to have you with us and to hear your insights in terms of what we need to do to combat this argument for fast track. Just let me know, Dave, when you would like me to advance your slides.
All right. And thanks for that introduction. You can hear me, right?
We can hear you, Dave.
Oh, good. All right. I've been listening in on these calls when I can in the past, and I got to say, I think you're all doing such a great job getting together on Sundays of all things, and fighting on this issue that's so important. I want to, I want to especially thank you, Liz. Thank you for all the work you're doing. I think you're just amazing. I'm always impressed by Liz's work. I know we're all muted, but I think a round of applause anyway is warranted here for Liz. And thank you for inviting me to speak today. Before I get to those corporate arguments from the post that went out a week ago, I just want to put a few points on background to it. First point is that we have an enormous, humongous trade deficit. Now, a lot of people don't know what that is. We get all this propaganda about, oh God, the budget deficit and all, the debt and all of that, and like the country will go away because of that. Well, the real drain on our economy is our trade deficit. The budget deficit is money we owe each other. The trade deficit adds up. The trade deficit is when we buy more stuff from other places than they buy from us. And we have had this massive trade deficit since the days, late 70s, early 80s, when the whole idea of free trade kind of took over as the dominant idea. Last year, we had $505 billion trade deficit. If we move a factory out of the country, bringing the same goods back here to sell in the stores, that's not trade. The only thing that does is it lets a corporation pocket the wage differential and the costs here of protecting the environment. They can pocket that for themselves. So, of course, they're pushing this stuff. That's what free trade is about. A few people profit massively. The workers lose wages. The country is poorer because we're draining money out of our economy. But those few who benefit, they benefit so much, the inequality has become so great they have their hands on the levers of power. Let me just give you a quick idea of how that affects us. Imagine $500 billion of orders just coming in right now, coming into companies that make and do things inside the United States. Imagine the effect on our economy. $500 billion of orders came in right now. Imagine the suppliers. Imagine the hiring of new employees. Imagine the people buying clothes, just buying things again, and the effect on local grocery stores and things like that. $500 billion. Well, when you think about how great that would be for the economy, that actually what you're seeing there is the effect, the drain on the economy from a $500 billion trade deficit. And we have had trade deficits every year since the late 70s, and especially since we started this deal with China into the World Trade Organization around 2001. And I think the effect of that and the jobs and the effect on our economy since then. So it helps us understand the problems of these trade deficits, I think, if we imagine how things could be. If we had trade deals that were negotiated by all of the stakeholders at the table. Right now, we're reacting to another NAFTA-style trade agreement. It comes from a rigged process. From the start, labor, environmentalists, consumer groups, and all of the other what are called stakeholders, in other words, all the interests of a society, they're kept away from the bargaining table. It's corporate representatives basically influencing these agreements. And the result, as the saying goes, the result is if you're not at the table, you're on the table. And that's what's happening. So imagine a trade agreement that was negotiated with labor, environmentalists, consumer groups, LGBT groups, health groups, everybody else, all the stakeholders of our society, democracy groups, at the table. Just a simple thing. Imagine a trade agreement that prohibits threatening an employee with moving their job out of the country. I mean, right now in our situation for the last, 30-some years, that's hard to even imagine, but you could do that in a trade agreement. Imagine a trade agreement that prohibits importing goods from a country that does not protect the environment, that does not protect worker safety. You want to sign a trade deal with us? Would we sign a trade deal and we both agree not to do that? Okay, that's the kind of thing that could be in a trade agreement that lists both sides, okay, on a border. We could do that, but that's not what we have. We have a rigged process. The next step in that rigged process is fast track type of thing. Fast track is simply designed to rig the process to get what is essentially pre-approval of trade agreements through Congress. And in the case of TPP, it's even a pre-approval of this agreement before they even know what's in it. They agree, by voting for fast track, they agree to never amend it after they see it. They're agreeing to not amend it before they know what's in it. They agree not to really have much debate over it. And the big one is they agree to pass it within 90 days. Well, 90 days of when the trade agreement's first, announced to the public and we see what's in it, that's not enough time for you and me to rally, to go out there and get people to hear about it and rally the opposition. So it's from the start, negotiating these agreements through the fast track. It's a rigged process from the beginning, and it's set up that way to rig our economy. And the result, look at what happens. We've got this massive inequality, and here we are, and a lot of that comes out of these trade agreements where they can ship your job out of the country and pocket the wage difference, and then threaten people that if you try to speak up, people are afraid for their jobs. You see it all around you. Now, part of this, people not being aware of it after the 90 days start, is they're not aware of it now. I just saw, there's so little media attention out there, and I just saw today a thing about, came from Media Matters. They took a look, and during the 17-month period between August 2013 and February 15th, only one nightly news show, PBS NewsHour, even mentioned the trade deal. And in this whole time of August 2013 to February to now, they only mentioned it 8 times. ABC, CBS, and NBC haven't mentioned the Trans-Pacific Partnership once. So, with that said, I wanted to get into the points on taking apart the trade deal. So this might be a good time to advance this slide. The first argument, and President Obama even used this argument in his State of the Union addresses, they always argue, of course, trade is good. I mean, you're not even allowed to say free trade is not good. That's like become one of those unspeakable things, unmentionable. You can't even say that. But they argue that trade is good, but only 5 of the 29 chapters of the Trans-Pacific Partnership are about trade at all. Well, the first thing that President Obama said, and it's in all of the other arguments, and it's their main thing, they say 95% of the world is outside of the U.S. 5% of the markets are outside of the U.S. So we need these trade agreements. Well, that's not really relevant. They're implying that we're not selling goods to 95% of the world, but we are. We're selling all around the world. We already are. So it's a patently false argument and misleading. In fact, it contradicts other corporate arguments that are coming up, like one of them is more than 38 million American jobs depend on trade. Well, sure, but that doesn't kind of contradict this argument that 95% of the world we're not even selling to. So, but secondly, that's a diversion. Most of our arguments, for example, on this call, have not been about the trade side. We can have arguments with the trade side, but our arguments are with other things too, like this investor-state dispute thing where Australia, for example, has a trade agreement where they have this investor-state dispute settlement, and tobacco companies are suing Australia for their country's anti-smoking efforts to protect the health of their citizens, okay? That's just one example of what that leads to. So, but that's not trade. That's corporation having a precedent over the sovereignty of a country to pass its own law. Okay, so the next argument that comes along is that U.S. has low tariffs and low barriers to entry, and many of our current trading partners, that's the other 90% of the world, 95% that we apparently don't trade with. Well, our trading partners have high tariffs and high barriers to entry, so they're really whooping us, they say. Well, what in the world? Back up. Why are we in these agreements? Why is a country with high tariffs, they don't let our goods in, they have high barriers to trade, what are we doing without tariffs and barriers in response? Well, that's a result of these free trade arguments that have become dominant, that we trade is good, so we shouldn't have barriers and we shouldn't have tariffs. Well, the country established itself with tariffs so that we could develop our manufacturing, and so that places with low wages, wouldn't undermine American democracy. You should look it up. It's called the American system. Other times it's called the American way. If you Google that, you'll see what America used to do, and then we would use the tariffs to make our economy more competitive with roads and canals, ports. So that says that we're a patsy on trade. Their argument for another trade agreement in this case is that we're a patsy. Well, that's not a good argument for these guys to do another trade agreement. So I had to throw that in. The next argument that they always use is we need to increase exports. That's exactly right. And that's the root of this. We do. We need to increase exports. They're saying we have all these barriers out there, so we need to make trade deals with these countries so we can increase exports. They never, ever tell you the other side of that story, and that is that imports, we need to increase net exports, but we don't. We increase exports, sure, but then we double increase imports. We close factories here. We import stuff from there. We might export some raw materials, oil and stuff. We might export some goods, Caterpillar tractors and stuff. But the net problem is this huge trade deficit, especially with China, where they're saying China's a huge market, we have to keep it open. Well, China is massive trade deficit with us, and we all know that. We all can look around the manufacturing Rust Belt and see what that means. Because these massive trade deficits throw the world's economy out of balance. So when they do talk trade deficits. But the other thing to point out is how much of these arguments are actually shiny, bright. Look over there at the shiny, bright object, because most of our arguments aren't even about trade. The trade deal, like NAFTA, has devastated us in jobs and in trade deficits, but the worst parts of this thing are the non-trade parts, mostly secret, things like the copyright protections that are greatly expanded and that threaten the freedom of the internet, the patent protections on drugs that threaten the ability to have low-cost generics and things like that. And for the next slide, there's this argument that 90% of our exporters are small businesses. Now, this is a particularly misleading argument. Well, I see we're back down. I got the slides out of order. The corporate advocates, they say, go to number 4. Yeah, the corporate advocates talk about, well, on the one hand, they say 95% of the markets are out there. They say more than 38 million jobs already depend on trade. Well, that's true. That's the export side. Double that is lost to trade. Actually not, but the net trade deficit is somewhere around 10 million jobs, depending, 5 to 10 million jobs, depending on who you're talking to and how it looks like. But that's a loss to that. Now to slide number 5, argument 5. The next argument they have is that 97% of the American companies that export are small businesses. Well, that's the huge redirection argument, saying, don't look over there. The reality is, yeah, maybe 97% of the companies that export are small businesses, but the exports are from the giant multinationals. They can't even support that assertion back. But here's the thing, those patents, those copyrights, the extensions like that, as well as many of the other parts in the non-trade parts of this agreement reinforce monopolies that kill off small business competition. And another thing that happens is that as you open up and lower the barriers, these they always talk about how, well, we're going to export to 95% of the world. Well, when they do these agreements, the multinationals have their own interests, and they leave holes open that we can see have happened. And what happens then is that 95% of the world, it's not like they have markets that are just waiting for companies to sell to them. They have their own companies. They're already buying things there. So the argument is actually that American companies will go over and dominate, and that's part of the push here is because they feel they can go dominate over the companies that are already there or merge with them or things like that. But the small businesses over there get wiped out, as we saw with NAFTA's small farmers, because our ag wiped out a lot of the northern corn farmers and stuff. But the other thing that happens then is those companies come here and wipe out a lot of these American smaller businesses, as we've seen. You hear about the companies finally having to shut down because of the foreign competition. They can't compete because of currency manipulation and things like that. I kind of went through this quickly because I want to open up more to question and answer so we can talk about this a lot. But I just wanted to make some of these points. I want to point people to some of the articles I've written. And I want to make the key point that this is a rigged process, that they're arguing with the bright, shiny object of trade when the agreement, first of all, is largely not about trade. It's about reinforcing giant corporate domination, as far as we know, in the parts that aren't secret. That fast track rigs the process so we don't have time to rally and organize opposition if there's things in here and it doesn't look good from what's leaked. And finally, it doesn't allow them to amend the deal. Let's say there's some horrible mistake flaw in it that we find out later after the massive corporate PR push pushes this through. This is a massive agreement that affects the world's economy into the future. And yet they want it passed within 90 days. They limit the date, and they say we can't fix anything that might be wrong with it. So it's a rigged process that further rigs our economy. And these are misdirection arguments, and even on the trade arguments, they completely always ignore that we have had massive trade deficits, that the free trade agreements we signed have actually increased trade deficits after they're signed. Korea did that, NAFTA did that. Look what happened with China. And they haven't been good for us. So the answer is, first of all, stop the secrecy. The second answer is open up the negotiations to all of the stakeholders. We want to have labor, environmental, health groups. We want to have LGBT. We want to have democracy groups. Every consumer groups, every stakeholder group and interest of society should be part of this process as they literally restructure the economy into the future. And with that, we can come out of that with some of the kinds of trade agreements and deals that actually do lift everybody up and actually do stop the importation of endangered parts of animals and stuff. We can actually do that. This doesn't do that. This is a rigged process. So with that, I guess I'd like to open it up to questions and answers.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. And everybody, you know the drill. Press *6 on your telephone if you'd like to ask Dave a question. And when we call on you, if you could, give us your name, first and last, where you are located, and then just real quickly, one question. And one question per person, please, just so everybody has a chance. All right. We have someone, Mr. or Ms. Getz, at area code 908. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Hello, my name is Wendy Getz. I'm from Freeland Heights in New Jersey. And last month, I went to my town council and called on my specific elected officials to also sign the petitions, call our congressmen, and speak out. My question is, their main argument pertains directly to TPA and fast track, and that the GOP Congress would never allow Obama to actually be able to fast track something that he hasn't been able to get this authority for 6 years. Why would he get it here in his last 2 years? So that's my question. How do I conquer that at my next town council? And I have reached out to Scott Garrett, and I am speaking with his aide and have requested a meeting there with him as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, that's one of these perception problems where there's no information out there in the main media. Actually, it's the Republicans and President Obama that are pushing this through. Yes, you'd think that what you're saying is the case, but the problem is that in reality, what you see is Republicans get in whatever arguments they use, and they do. I'm sorry for those who are bipartisan in this whole thing, but right now I'm going to be a little bit partisan because what I've noticed is that no matter what they say, they get in, and then what they do is deregulation of the large corporations and tax cuts. So I'm very cynical, sorry. But it's actually a lot of Republicans are for this. They're totally into this neoliberal free trade argument because it helps the large corporations that are their benefactors. And right now, a lot of Democrats recognizing what NAFTA did and such are on the other side.
Thanks, Dave. Although we do know that there's an awful lot of Democrats, including the president, who are pushing for it. So we need to be fair.
Yeah.
Fair to them too.
But Celeste might have a even better answer than I gave just now.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't just pick on the GOP. I think we have equally guilty Dems that are telling
We do. Oh, yeah, we do. But we have a lot of Democratic opposition. I think half the Democrats in the last Congress were opposed to fast track.
Okay. Yes, thanks, Dave. All right, we've got Tony O'Doherty in San Diego. Tony, go ahead. You have the floor.
Hi, this kind of ties in with the last question. If TPA is passed, then it's going to last for at least 5 years. The last version with extensions lasted 20 years, so the Obama's connection with it is going to be long gone when it's still in force. And I think this is something we need to emphasize and to tie into the fact that there's a line of other trade agreements coming down the pipe, the TTIP, TISA, and we know from existing treaties and from what's in TPP that's leaked that none of them are positive. And I think we should emphasize that we're getting into a situation where we're selling ourselves down the river for years and years to come when TPA crops up.
Thanks, Tony.
I agree. Yeah, well, I agree. It's very dangerous if this passes because it'll just continue and continue. But it's so important that, I mean, out there in the real world, NAFTA has become shorthand for these trade deals in general. People generally blame NAFTA, even though a lot of it was really China. But people understand what these trade deals have done. This is about getting this pushed through before people can rally and understand that there's another one coming. I think.
Thank you so much. And we've got someone from SPEEA, and I'm guessing this might be our friend Stan Sorsher with a hand up, area code 206. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's my phone ID. This is Stan Sorsher in Seattle. You know, we were talking to one of our House members here, and our House Democratic delegation has always been big on trade, voting for trade. They can't have this image in their mind that trade should possibly be bad. And we've tried this historic perspective, you know, that this is a moment of history, really, which I think is the way I sometimes say Tony's point, that if this passes, this will set a global norm for generations and will determine how life is organized in 2050. And I'll just tell you, most members of Congress that I see their face, they become very alarmed because what we're really doing is asking them to make a leap of faith. They're going to have to turn against these corporate interests, which they're very comfortable with for any number of reasons, and they're going to have to take sides with us. And like, who the hell are we really? What? That's the look in their face. Even if I could understand what you're saying, and believed it, I would have to align with you against all these corporate interests. And somehow I think we have to give them more of a sense of security that there is a right position, a correct, just, fair, important part of their responsibility kind of position, that they are so uncomfortable with what we're saying, it's just hard for them to make that leap of faith. Do you get that impression, or is that sort of a misunderstanding of the dynamics?
Exactly right, Stan. And I want to tell everybody to go to Huffington Post and look up Stan Sorcher. You just write some great stuff, I got to say. What you have just nailed it, I think, about this problem we have of this PR firm ability to set a perception environment. Members of Congress, they're busy. Their staffs are busy. And one thing that happens with members of Congress is when they start hearing let me back up. You have all these issues that come up, and you have these lobbyists and interest groups, and they often set up these environments where they get their way. But something can happen once in a while where enough people become aware of an issue and start talking about it and get involved. That can actually sweep all of that away. And you see it happen again and again where when something actually hits the news, when people actually talk about it, it can just sweep it away. But we're not there. We're in this situation. We know darn well what's going on. We understand TPP. We understand fast track, but not very many people do. And the media is just barely not talking about it, So we have this real problem of how do we get out past our circles, Huffington Post, places I write, East Halls, and the people we're all in contact with. How do we ripple this up past that, out to people we're often uncomfortable talking to, out to places that we don't usually reach? That is our key problem here, and we're doing a lot. I mean, there have been some great videos, there have been some great actions, the airplane flying over a stadium with a banner behind it, that stuff helps. Letters to the editor help. All of those things help, and even members of Congress who are totally on our side might have to oppose us in one of those sweeps of PR when they just don't see any public rallying around an issue, then they kind of have to go with what everybody else is ready to vote on. So that's the problem we face. That's why fast track is so dangerous, because they'll get this set up and the corporations will be ready. They'll have a PR campaign like you've never seen the minute that TPP comes out, if they've got fast track, and they could just pound on that 90 days and silence everybody else. And part of the plan is that 90 days does not give us time to react. They'll have it planned, but the public won't be able to actually see what's in TPP in time. So Stan has just nailed the problem that the environment, the legislative perception environment, is what's key, and it's our mission is to try to get it out past our circles. Letters to the editor, going to these town halls, that's a lot of it. When a representative in Congress starts seeing that the public's paying attention to something, then they start paying attention to something. And everything changes at that point, because they never want to get on the wrong side of a big issue. But until it becomes a big issue, the lobbyists, etc., can manipulate the way people see things. So that's a long answer. I think it's really important, and Stan nailed it.
Stan did nail it. And those of you who have been joining us for a while may recognize Stan. Stan has actually been a guest speaker on our previous calls, and we hope to have him on again and have him share some additional wisdom with us. We only have about 7 minutes left, so I'm going to ask everybody to ask their questions as quickly as possible so we can get to as many questions as we can. Nancy Price has a hand up. Nancy's also been a speaker on our calls, and can fill you in a little bit on. She's in Northern California, one of my fellow Californians. Nancy.
Well, thank you, Liz. I wanted to ask, I guess maybe Celeste. So something that's not being discussed with the TPP at all is this regularization coherence chapter, which is sort of tricky and detailed, but actually it sets up a new federal bureaucracy to oversee cohering trade agreement provisions with federal government agency provisions, and well, there's some other very tricky things in it. But actually, because it sets up more government, can we use this as a way of getting Tea Partiers to reject the TPP because it's more big government? If we could explain the regulatory coherence chapter in a soundbite, could we use that effectively?
This is Celeste. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Celeste. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I think you'd have to get some Tea Party folks in the room and test out messages and see what would work rather than just having me pontificate on what would work. I think that, in some ways, the regulatory coherence ideas in the TPP and the TPIP, there's so many steps away from how average voters think about their lives that sometimes by the time that you put all the work in to make that argument, you've already lost them because you need something that's sort of quick and graspable and relates to their life. And the regulatory coherence stuff is really hard because this sort of corporate segment that Dave has been talking about has, for the past 40 years, really convinced Americans that regulation's bad, that regulation's horrible, that regulation sucks, it's not good for us, it's just red tape, it's obstructing the economy, and people sort of have bad negative feelings about regulation. So they're hearing this will streamline regulations. It's you have to work so hard to explain the problem that you might have lost them. I think that's something that perhaps we should talk about later. But I would say, especially for purpose, stick to the issues that we do know work. And while we're thinking of other messaging, but we do know what works is, referring to sovereignty, referring to the Constitution, referring to unlimited executive power, and then the real basics that we know work are jobs and wages and safe food and a clean environment. And those are sort of the top issues. And some of the rest of it, even, ISDS, I spend a ton of my work doing research and writing on ISDS, but in terms of messaging to the public, it's such a foreign concept to people that often they have to hear about it 4 or 5 times before they even listen.
Yeah. Can I interrupt you real quickly? Just for those of us who are on the call, we're down to 3 minutes too, but ISDS, explain maybe to them it's the investor state dispute mechanism that you're talking about.
Yeah,
a lot of people might not know the acronym.
It takes explanation. So sometimes if we keep it simple, it's often easier. That's all.
Okay, great. Just for those of us who might not know the acronym ISDS, it's the investor state dispute mechanism that's been so controversial in terms of letting them sue our government if the corporations don't make profits. So, all right, we've got a few more folks up with hands up, and I'm sorry, we're probably not going to get to everybody today. We have someone at area code 609-977-6214. Just let us know who you are, where you are, and please share your questions so we can get to a couple more folks before it's time to go.
Hi, I'm Rob Benjamin from Hamilton, New Jersey. Hello?
Yes, Rob. Yeah, go ahead. You have the floor.
Hi. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'll cut it down to one. One of the things that's concerned me is corporations think globally and act globally. We tend to think globally and act locally. I noticed that the Council of Canadians has come out in strong opposition to the TPP, and I believe they're also strongly in opposition to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I'm wondering why we are not talking more about cross-border alliances for the ports that are opposed to these free trade agreements and working more closely with our Canadian counterparts.
Can I jump in real quickly, Dave, before we go into
That's for Celeste anyway.
Yeah, that is for Celeste, but I'm going to jump in this list. We've actually had speakers on the call in the past from the Council of Canadians, and they do, in fact, they're on our mailing list. They share information with us And so there is a little bit of cross-border working, but I think Celeste can probably explain a little more effectively what's going on.
There are bi-weekly calls where activists, leaders are talking, not only just to Canadians, but to folks in Australia, New Zealand, Japan. You know, all of the TPP countries are invited. Sometimes we have language issues, but that's happening. If you're interested in somehow getting your group involved with working more internationally, email me. I can try and set you up with this other group, but it is certainly happening, and I think this call in particular is just, this is a U.S.-focused call, but you're exactly right. We need to get allies everywhere we can get them.
Thanks so much, Celeste. Okay, we've got Alan Crisler, who, if I remember correctly, is from New York or somewhere in the East. He was early on the call. I know he's been waiting patiently to ask his question. Alan?
Hi. I spent 20 years with in government oversight, and I think that Dave has a very good approach in that he's nibbling around the edges of the really central issues. So I'd like to endorse him in that. I think he should come forth primarily with the idea that the TPP itself is more or less an ending of democracy and replacing it with a corporatocracy. That many things since Citizens United have led us in this way of undermining democratic rule. Secrecy in negotiations is one of them. TPP is another, and a fast track is a way of bringing about dispute resolution that will stop countries from allowing their voters any ability to go against corporate rule. And we're in an environment where that means allowing pollution that may end humanity. I think he should press democracy and the preservation of humanity as the central issues, along with things like fast track, because if you end democracy,
I think we all agree with you, Alan. I think we all agree with you on that.
It's a question of emphasis.
And one point on that is
so forward focused. Okay. Talk about trade generality.
Alan, let Dave answer you. Sorry, Alan. Yeah. Sorry, Alan. We got to give a chance to answer you.
Time to move along. I'm sorry. You're exactly right, but here's the problem with that is when you talk to regular people out there who've never heard any of this, and you start saying, oh my God, this could end democracy, and all those kind of things, it's absolutely true, but often we have a problem with this sort of thing is that you start to sound, I don't mean you, I mean I do, I really get going sometimes, and then people kind of turn away, and they start to say, this guy's a fanatic, saying things like that. Sometimes things are so strange now in the way things are going on in Washington that when you pay attention and you start trying to describe them to people, they turn away from you thinking you're nuts. I mean, literally, like I won't get into it time, but literally sometimes when you're trying to describe the effect of some of these things that are going on, more corporate tax cuts, Citizens United and things like that, you sound like you get a little bit... to normal, regular people out there who aren't following much news, it's like too much sometimes, I think. So we have to find clear things that directly affects often their pocketbook as approaches to how do you reach them and talk about it.
Thanks, Dave. And I think, that's the point of this call. We're talking about the loss of jobs, something that everybody can relate to. It resonates sort of across the board.
Not that I was wrong at all, but
yeah, no, Alan's right. His point is well taken. It's just harder to sell to the general public, I think, and Dave made a good point about that. Dave, do we have time for one more question?
I'm fine with it. Yeah, I don't know what your positions are with the service.
Sure. We'll take one more call. Mark Sanguinetti, and Mark, just if you could just jump into your question real quickly so Dave has a chance to answer it, and we can still have time for our wrap. Mark.
Okay, well, I've known about the trade deficit since 1975, the last year of a trade surplus. But my question might be more for Celeste. Obviously, members of Congress and the Senate should at least read the text of the bills before voting yes or no on them. Voting yes or no without actually reading the text is the equivalent of signing a contract to purchase real estate without seeing the property or knowing about any flaws in it. Why don't we simply contact all members of Congress and tell them all that they should be given complete information on the Trans-Pacific Partnership and without any deception and untruthful information, and then tell them to demand that they be given this information. We should make phone calls regarding this to their D.C. and local offices, and I did this to 2 offices on Friday. Hear me?
Yes, and I think you're exactly right on the transparency and reading. You know, this was one of the big arguments, frankly, against the Affordable Care Act / Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, is folks were saying, you know, has my congressperson read it? And if he or she hasn't read it, what are they doing, you know, voting on it? Either way, you can't make a decision unless you know what's in it. It's great rhetorically. Certainly, it allows, if you just say, look, this trade agreement, and I was just rewatching a Ross Perot video earlier, and I posted the link to the Ross Perot video. He had the final printout of NAFTA, which turned out to be 2,000 pages. And, you know, as he explained the whole process of, as the USTR released summaries, and then summaries, and then summaries, and it wasn't public until shortly before Congress could vote. And that meant public for anybody, including lots of the members of Congress. And no, they didn't read every single page. And in fact, if they had, you know, again, they wouldn't have necessarily understood it. Not because it has to do with how smart you are. It's because it's in legalistic international treaty-ese, and unless you're well studied in that, you've got to sit and read it with somebody who does have that expertise and immediately can tell you, this is what this clause is really saying, this is what this clause, just like you're saying when you buy property, when you sign, if anybody's ever tried to read their contract with their insurance company word for word, it's not written in information that normal people can understand unless you have training in that specific area of the law. So it's a great thing to say, and it's a great reason against fast track, because the fast track law ensures the secrecy, ensures the negotiations goes on behind closed doors, ensures that the text is not released to the public until they're done, and then it's the point where you cannot amend it or fix it, and keeps it away from not just us, but from Congress who's voting on our behalf. Now, a different kind of trade negotiating authority, assuming we wanted to do trade agreements at all, which again, remember we're talking to members of Congress who do want to do trade agreements, you could write it differently. You could say the text will be released and posted on the internet after every round so we can see the progress. And hey, they do that at the World Trade Organization, at the World Intellectual Property Organization, at other international treaty negotiations. They do this. So it's not impossible. It certainly can be done. You could put the time limit once the treaty was totally finished much longer, rather than saying it's a maximum of 90 days before Congress has to have voted. You could sort of say, well, it's a minimum of 9 months or something, to at least give folks time to actually read it, have it analyzed, talk with experts, you know, study it. Assuming you really actually wanted to do trade in a way that was good for America and not just America's corporations, which is, again, how Dave laid it out, and I think it's right. It's sort of what America's largest corporations have done is gotten our own government, to act in their interest rather than in the interest of the country. They've substituted the interests of these global corporations who claim to be American, but then don't even want to pay any American taxes or otherwise contribute to our society by creating decent jobs and taking care of the communities in which they operate, to do that. So I think that's an excellent line. We should all take that, incorporate that into part of our talking points. And whatever you can do, particularly locally, to talk about reading bills, reading trade agreements before they're passed, and how fast track prevents that, is going to be useful and helpful, particularly to people that haven't heard all of this before. Even if they don't understand all these technical terms or trade deficit, again, as Dave said, bring it back to somebody's kitchen table. He certainly understands, by gosh, I want my congressperson to read something before he or she votes on it in my name. That's a useful argument.
Hey, thanks so much, Celeste. And that's really, that in a nutshell, what we need to concern ourselves with. I was going to tease you and say don't sugarcoat it, but you pretty much nailed it. I think, do we have one more question time, Dave? I think we can ask one more question. But I see one of our organizers, I think Susan Du Bois, has a hand up. So that's going to be our last question of the evening, everybody. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone, but go ahead, Sue.
Hi, this is Susan Du Bois in Albany, New York. I had a question about the secrecy aspect. I got an email probably within the last week about Senator, I'm drawing a blank on his name, from Vermont.
Sanders.
Yeah, Sanders. About the European Union having agreed to release their proposals in the TTIP negotiations, I believe it is. And there was a link to a European Union page and so forth, and I haven't heard anything about that, which seems like a fairly sudden increase in information that's available about that agreement. Does anybody have any information on that or thoughts on that, and how that might be used if that is indeed information that's out there now?
That's for Celeste.
Okay. The AFL-CIO, yeah, that is correct. What the European Commission is doing is, after each round of TPP negotiations, TTIP is the trade agreement on the Atlantic side, not the TPP. They are releasing to the general public through a website their text proposals that they put on the table and showed the United States. And the AFL-CIO is working on a coalition letter. About a year ago, we did one that said, hey, USTR, the EU has agreed to at least do a public consultation about the issue of ISDS. If investors take the settlement because it's so controversial, they're going to slow down and ask for opinions from the public. Will you do the same? USTR basically said no. So we're going to do another coalition letter saying, hey, well, at least the EU has gone this far. Again, that's not our feeling. But in other words, you're embarrassing. Like, you've got another you claim to be the most democratic, government in the world, and you've got European governments over here doing more than you. So will you meet the standard? And I've already talked to the chief negotiator for the U.S. for this agreement, and he said publicly, no, we won't post, but we've got to do a big push anyway. And again, it's just, I think we use that against them to say you should be embarrassed. You cannot be as transparent as the Europeans, because this is America and we're supposed to be second to no one.
Hey, thanks so much, Celeste, and thank you everyone else also, and a special thanks to our guest speaker, Dave Johnson. I'm gonna go ahead and give the reins to Dave for a second so that he can wrap, and I'm going to ask host team, if you could all mute yourselves if you're not speaking right now, because we're getting a little bit of background, and I'd like to wrap up the call with sort of some nice, clean audio and give Dave the last word. Dave?
All right. Well, and Liz, not the last word, because you're going to come in and tell people how to sign up for future notifications on these calls. Yeah. And I just want to say thank you for having me on the call. Let's all figure out ways to get this out wider than just us. The best way to approach this is to just imagine for yourself, what would a trade agreement look like if everybody was involved in having it happen? Just imagine the difference in the world. Imagine a trade agreement that, as I said, prohibits an employer from threatening to move a job out of the country as a result of this trade agreement. That is the kind of thing that we could dream for in a real democracy if we had an open, transparent, and inclusive process. And that highlights to all of us how far we are from that and what is really going on here. I think dreaming about the possibilities is one of the best ways to understand how this process is being gamed against us. So I think I'll just wrap it up with that. Check out the stuff we've got published at various places, the links on the slides if you're in the meeting room, and Liz will be mailing out the links after the call. So thank you again for having me on, and I'm always trying to get on Sundays and listening at least.
Hey, thank you so much, Dave. And yes, as promised, we will be sharing all of these links. And I shared a couple because Dave has been quite prolific in writing about this issue and all those related issues that involve, getting money out of politics, keeping jobs here, investing in public infrastructure and community and all those wonderful things that we all care about. Just to let everybody know, we do have some upcoming speakers, and we will be sharing information in terms of exact topics once we work it out. But we've got Robert Kuttner with the Economic Policy Institute that Celeste actually recruited for us. We'll be confirming a date with him, we hope, very soon. Michael Stumo with Coalition for a Prosperous America. Those of you who've been with us for a while may remember Michael has actually been a guest speaker on a call in the past. CPA does a great job of rallying conservative folks around this issue, so we will be hearing some new talking points and interesting issues that his group has uncovered. So we will let you know very shortly as soon as those calls are confirmed. We will be having a call on the 22nd, so one or both of these gentlemen will be speaking on the 22nd, which is our next call. In the meantime, just wanted to encourage everybody to get involved in those Recess Week actions over President's Day. Report back if you have something that you want to share on the call on the 22nd, since it'll be just about the last day of those actions. Get in touch with us early so that we can get a slide up for you and give you a chance to tell everybody what happened. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining the call, and thanks again to all of our wonderful, wonderful guest speakers and host team for putting this together. You guys are the best. Have a great Sunday. Thanks. I'm going to take everyone off mute now. I'm going to stop our
Your conference recording has stopped. Q&A session is over.
Good night, everybody.
Hi. Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello?
Oh, yeah.
And I just let everybody know we'll be leaving the meeting room open for a few minutes afterwards in case anybody wants to exchange notes or scroll back through and grab a link. You'll be able to do so for about the next half hour or so. So feel free to stay in the meeting room and communicate or share notes with one another if you like.
Can I ask a question?
Stay in the meeting room and share notes if you like.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, if I can answer it, I'm not sure who else is on.
Or you can answer it. How do we find out what our senators and what our representatives
In the chat.
how our representatives feel about it?
For an hour and a half.
Well, one thing that you can do is, and the site I know is being taken down right now, I think, for maintenance, but PDA actually has the action map that they have posted, and I will type a link into the chat room. Are you in the meeting room right now, in the online meeting room?
No, I'm not. I'm just on the phone.
Okay, well, what you want to do is just go to PD America, PDAMER.
Yeah, I have that. I know them.
Okay, and then look for the action map. It might be down because I know they were updating it, but as soon as they get the information from the new Congress, they'll have that up. If you look at it now, if it's up, they might have the 113th Congress, so you can pretty much decide if your rep is an incumbent who was reelected, you can see where he or she stands right now. If your representative is new, okay, yeah. If you have an existing rep, then just go to that site, mediaamerica.org/TPP. You'll see the state of Alabama. What you need to do is just scroll down to the entire U.S. map to click on your own state. and then find your representative, and you should be able to locate that information.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, all right. This is the only thing to do with that, and I drink plenty of water. I remember I had.
Goodbye.